About this time last week, X-Men Apocalypse hit cinemas in the UK. I saw it a couple of days ago, and I've yet to say much about the film. I did a Facebook kind of mini film review, and I got some good responses to that. So I was like, alright, I'm going to make a video discussing in a bit more depth, but no spoilers on this one. So if you haven't seen the film yet, don't worry, you can still enjoy this video. Because let me just put it out there now. I wasn't a massive fan of this film, to be honest. I've given it a 6.5 out of 10, which I'll kind of dissect. My biggest issue with the film was story. Now, without going into too many spoilers, there's just so many plot holes and directions that the film goes or tries to go in and then completely cuts dead. There's a scene maybe midway through which kind of is the first big act of Apocalypse. He does some things, and effectively you might have seen the scene in the trailer where there's some like nukes going up into the sky. Well, again, without being too spoilery, that scene doesn't go anywhere. Like, honestly, it doesn't go anywhere. It's really weird. You just kind of watch it and you're like, oh, this is a serious plan. I thought so anyway. I was like, oh shit, he's going to do some serious damage here. Nope. Nope, it didn't do anything. Okay. Sure, why not? So yeah, I'm going to break down the film into the two sections, what I enjoyed and what I just hated about the film. But don't be surprised if the list of what I hated far outweighs the list of what I love for this one, because it wasn't their best X-Men film. It wasn't X2, it wasn't Days of Future Past, it wasn't First Class. It was better than The Last Stand, because it'd be very different. Well, I say that, we had Wolverine Origins. Okay, well, it's better than those two, but it's not their best. Right, so I made some notes after watching it. First of all, I would just want to say how awesome Oscar Isaac was as Apocalypse. I really enjoyed Apocalypse as a villain, because generally, compared it to the MCU, Marvel isn't great at villains. They're kind of weak throwaway villains, but honestly, I thought, especially the introduction to this character, which is kind of the first 10-15 minutes of the film, it was really, really good. And you got a sense of his power, his prominence. There are a lot of moments where you genuinely fear him, and I don't know whether that's just the voice thing, modulation they put on. I really enjoyed the character. He had a lot of development, as a film called X-Men Apocalypse should. The only thing I didn't like about it was his prosthetics and his whole get-up, because they had issues in production anyway. That's why they, after the Comic-Con trailer maybe 2 years ago, they had to rework the whole thing, because he was compared to that guy out of Power Rangers. You couldn't really tell it was Oscar Isaacs apart from very close-up scenes. You could see his face kind of buried underneath a couple of inches of plastic and foam and shit. So that was the only thing, but otherwise I'm fine with Apocalypse. It was a good villain. Another thing I wanted to mention on my good list was the fact that Magneto and Xavier once again are really, really awesome. I'm a big fan of these certain portrayals of the characters. I mean, I don't think you can kind of top the originals of God, I can't remember his name. I'm gonna say Jean-Luc Picard. It's not Jean-Luc Picard. Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. I don't think you can top that, but Michael Fassbender really is a great Magneto. The scenes which involve his family, which I won't go too much into, are really the highlight of this movie. Like, they have emotional depth, they have the consequences in terms of the film, they give justification to his later decision. I love those scenes. I thought they were probably my favourite bits of the film. And again, Charles Xavier, you see the development of his X-Men, which began in First Class with the kind of original concept of the X-Men. Other characters I enjoyed include Quicksilver. I mean, he is once again freaking awesome in this film. Whoever does the choreography for just his scenes, like he has that scene in Days of Future Past in the kitchen, which I think won like 3 or 4 awards just by itself. Honestly, the scene in this is probably not as good, but it again will probably just win awards from how well it's done. And I was really impressed. I could watch a whole film with him in. Like, why doesn't Fox do this? Make a film with him in, guys. Jeez. Other new characters were good as well, like Nightcrawler, Jean Grey and Cyclops. They're okay. You get to see their part origins. And really, that's about all I can say in support of this film. The fact that they had some good characters and that the villain was great. Because, in all honesty, the rest of it kind of was either lackluster or just straight up sucked. So my biggest issue with the film, as I've listed here, is Mystique, actually. The character itself has become like a fundamental pivot of this new X-Men franchise. And that's all wrong for a start, in my opinion. She made sense being a pivotal character in Days of Future Past because the Sentinels' technology was based upon her mutation ability. So that's fine, I have no issue with that. Same in First Class. In this film, honestly, she kind of goes to the mansion at some point and says, "I need your help, Charles." That's it. That's not even a spoiler because she does that in almost every single goddamn film. So I really wasn't impressed with it. And also the whole business about Jennifer Lawrence, the actor, no longer wants to put on the blue makeup and the blue suit. So she spends, I'd say, 95% of the film in her human form. And this just kind of doesn't make sense to me because if you look at it from a character development standpoint, it's actually said in First Class when there's a conversation between young Xavier and Mystique. Young Xavier thinks that her blue form is her most true to herself and her most beautiful, and that she should retain that form. And they continued that trend until now, and they just went, "Oh, fuck it," because we can't get her in the makeup anymore. So that went well. Not. Let's talk about the 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse. 3 of them were shit, honestly. I think Magneto was the good one, obviously, because you understood why he followed Apocalypse, you understood his motivation, and you understood why he essentially aligned with that ideology that Apocalypse was pursuing. The other 3, so we'll start off with Angel, or Archangel as he becomes, has like minimal character development. I expected more in terms of character development and got to know more. That's all I can say. Psylocke was another member of the 4 Horsemen, and once again she was lackluster. You didn't get a full sense of her powers. You didn't understand why she aligned with Apocalypse. Oh, one thing I didn't understand was there's actually a moment in the film. Again, it's a little bit spoilery, but honestly, it's just a few seconds where you see Apocalypse kind of upgrading the armor of the other 3 Horsemen. He just completely skips her because she has to wear a skimpy suit and you have to see most of her body. Okay then, that makes sense. The, 2,000-year-old god, that is Apocalypse, but he's not a god. The 2,000-year-old bloke just obviously wants to see a bit of flesh. I don't know. There's no reason for that. It's kind of a bit archaic, if you ask me. The fact that, like, Storm got it. She got the armour as well. But obviously, must have just overlooked that. And then, talking about Storm, she was a third disappointment for me. Although she had the most character development and the most prominent role, she's so lackluster. My biggest issue with Storm is that no one cares about her. Actually reminded me of the Storm in Days of Future Past, where everyone's biggest criticism of that film was, okay, Storm was in it, they got Halle Berry back in for like 2 minutes to stand around and occasionally zap things. It was honestly the same in this, although she had a slightly larger role. And I was so underwhelmed. But I did enjoy actually how they put her origins back in Kenya. That I can support. The story in areas is okay, but there's so many artificial forced tie-ins or forced arcs that they're trying to get across. The actual relationship between Jean Grey and Cyclops, which we all know and love from the first X-Men trilogy, there's just like so many areas where they're really forcing that relationship right from when they meet. And it was just unnecessary, to be honest. Another big issue with this story, or the continuity of the film, was that fucking Wolverine scene. Like, we all knew from the latest trailer that he was going to be in it because they made a big point of putting his claws at the end. But the scene itself is so... It just didn't need to be there. This whole film has just issues with things that don't need to be there. And that was one of them. They obviously didn't have enough confidence in the film as a standalone without putting Hugh Jackman in for at least a cameo. I mean, it was more than his First Class cameo. But, he killed some people. I'm not even sure he spoke. In fact, I'm positive he didn't say a fucking word. And that's it. And it was a real kick in the teeth when Cyclops finished by saying... He made some kind of remark about, oh, we won't be seeing him again. Wow! Just tell us there and then that we won't actually be seeing Wolverine again. That was lazy and sloppy as well. Oh, we won't be seeing him again. Oh, he's gone now. Oh, where's he gone? Into his next film. And then the same with Stryker, who was in the film because he's in every goddamn film. The fight scenes generally are pretty meh. The actual fight scenes seem really poorly choreographed. Oh, and by the way, Beast in this film, yet again, is just completely underrepresented. Like, I've yet to have seen an on-screen version of Beast that kick ass as much as he does in the comics. He's just like, he's there, and you get a sense that he might be strong, but not really strong. Because he gets beat the shit out of every goddamn film. I'm just like, oh, it's Beast again. He's gone to his Beast form. Yeah, this should be awesome. Oh no, he's getting kicked around. And then, like in Days of Future Past, he kind of spends most of that lifting things. Like it's just a janitor. Yeah. So there's a small fight scene between Beast and Psylocke, and it was actually kind of like really weird to watch. And it's just really awkward. And even like the scenes where Beast is once again, like I just said, holding things or carrying heavy things, you don't actually get a sense that it's heavy because of the way they've edited it together, which I really didn't like. Right, so is that a toy car or is it made of air? Or what's going on here? And there's just so many examples of fight scenes in this film that are just a bit crap. And even the last fight scene, I was just like, wow, that's impressive. Magneto's doing his thing with metal, but he doesn't even change his fighting stance. He just does this thing where he's like sort of throwing lots of metal constantly at Apocalypse. He just keeps doing that for like 10 minutes. I'm like, you're Magneto. How many skills do you have here? And you're just going to keep doing that. The final thing I wanted to say about the film is that it's way too convenient in its conclusion. Honestly, it's like they got to the end of this trilogy and someone at Fox said, guys, we need them to do the X-Men thing. And they went, what X-Men thing? You know, the X-Men thing where they're all together. Okay, we'll get everyone a suit, like the coolest suit they've probably had, for the last 30 seconds. It's kind of like, it's like the circle shot in Avengers, but way too late into the film for anyone to give a shit. And I was just like, is that it? Is that it? So I'm just going to run through some, just so you get a better idea of how a film's been received on a wider scale, because I do understand that my opinion is not the definitive opinion, as much as I might like to think it is. This is a section from what a friend of mine called James said, who's probably the biggest X-Men fan that I know. He said, I give it 7.5 out of 10. It is good and certainly much better than the abominations that are X-Men The Last Stand and both Wolverine films, which I've already pointed out. But I agree that it is nowhere as good as Days of Future Past, which again I've already said. The actors do commit to their roles, and in spite of the limited source material for the character, Oscar Isaac certainly does dedicate himself to his performance as Apocalypse. Agree. Personally, I think that of all the actors, Michael Fassbender stands out the most with a brilliant performance as Magneto, which in many respects is the only redeeming quality of The Last Stand when discussing the performance of the equally brilliant Ian McKellen. I actually don't agree with that one. We'll talk about that another time. Of all the incarnations of Apocalypse, I would argue that this is the strangest. However, there are aspects of the film I do have problems with. For example, Wolverine's cameo for me seemed unnecessary and merely added just to end the barrage of Where's Wolverine comments in the trailers. This is exactly what I said. The kind of general theme here is that we didn't need another Wolverine cameo for the sake of it. Like, we know what the X-Men are now, we know about other established X-Men characters, and we don't need Wolverine to constantly be around to say, hey guys, don't worry, this is a legitimate film. That's it for me. It's almost like they are legitimising the films by putting Wolverine in. That's spoilery, so I won't talk about that. Oh, here's a good point. Furthermore, everyone at the end seemed to have forgotten that Magneto was responsible for causing global casualties, mounting in the millions, and almost letting him off. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, the ending is, without spoiling it, very convenient, and you can tell it's like an ending to a trilogy because they don't leave it hanging. I think that they do forget about the fact that Magneto had this big role in Days of Future Past, because they allude to it at moments through TV interviews, and they kind of drop it into Cyclops' origin as like a news report, which is really weird. They talk about the fact there's a 10-year time difference between the events of Days of Future Past and the events of Apocalypse, but it's not believable in any way because no one looks 10 years older. And for example, characters like Quicksilver are still living in their their mum's basement for 10 years, and like he's got a new Pac-Man machine. Really? You're the quickest guy in the world, and that's what you did in 10 years. Interesting. I would give it 7.5 out of 10. Although it fails in comparison to its predecessors, I consider it an adequate addition to the X-Men franchise. Compared to Civil War, it falls short, as Civil War is in my view fantastic, but it is a lot better than Batman vs Superman. That final comment, I definitely agree with. Batman vs Superman sucked! Another comment I received from one of my friends said, it was good, but the final fight was probably the only main highlight, but Beast and Nightcrawler were in it, and they're my favourites, and Quicksilver. Yeah, Quicksilver and Nightcrawler I can agree with. Beast I still think's been underused so many times that no one gives a shit about him anymore, which is a real shame, given, like I said, how awesome he is as a character. So every time I see Beast now, I'm so underwhelmed. Like, it really is quite upsetting, to be honest, but what can you do? What can you do? And another part of a review I received from another friend says, I've just seen the new X-Men and I must say, I'm most disappointed. After seeing your recent review, I thought I'd give my contribution. Thank you. I feel that many of the characters were poorly portrayed. Jean was a huge disappointment, especially after seeing what powers her older self has. Yeah, that's interesting. I think X-Men The Last Stand, as bad as the film as that was, you did feel a sense of how strong she was when she unlocked the Dark Phoenix Force. In this, yeah, she doesn't do much. She kind of walks around a lot. Wolverine's inclusion doesn't seem to follow on from previous films, and his creation/escape. Yeah, it's kind of just forced in. Actually, continuity-wise, it does actually make sense from Days of Future Past, oddly enough. But in terms of going forward, it'll be interesting to see how they tie that into the wider continuity. They are supposed to meet Nightcrawler in later films, yet they seem to have met and developed a friendship with him now. Yeah, the only thing I can say about that is, it's since for the events of Days of Future Past, it's supposed to be like a new continuity, because various events from that have now been resolved. So they almost exist as two separate like universes now. Think of like Back to the Future or something like that. But yeah, I do agree that in terms of a wider continuity, it doesn't make sense. They're just bringing him in earlier. There didn't seem to be any action throughout that had any significance. Even the final fight was a disappointment. Yeah, completely agree. The final fight was just a bit... Yeah, it was disappointing because it was shit. Because it all built up to this massive scene where you had like the four horsemen and the X-Men, and nothing seemed to come of it. Like the horsemen were all kind of crap, like I've already said, apart from Magneto, and Apocalypse himself was very weird. He walked around with a big bubble shield. I got some more comments as well. Some were less articulate than that, so I'll skip past those ones. But honestly, I give the film a 6.5 out of 10. I've seen some people go 7.5. Someone gave it a 4 out of 10, which I think was a bit harsh, but I can understand why they would have given that. And there are some X-Men fanboys that are like giving it 9 and 10s out of 10, which I struggle to find how you could give it that, because the only films that deserve a 9 out of 10 or above, in my opinion, are X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past, because they were really awesome X-Men films. This wasn't an awesome X-Men film, but it wasn't the worst either. It was kind of midway. So that's why I'm giving this a 6.5 out of 10.
Boring.
And that is my X-Men Apocalypse review. So I hope you enjoyed that. This is the first full film review I've done. I'm hoping to do some more if I see films I enjoy, or films I don't enjoy, as the case might be. Give it a like, a thumbs up, whatever the fuck else you do. Like, thumbs up, favourite? You don't favourite anymore. No. Give it a thumb, subscribe, maybe tell your friends if you like me talking about films for like 20 minutes, or however long this video is going to be. And I will see you in the next one. See you next time. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that tasty video. See what I did there? See what... Doesn't matter.